introduce yourselves?
Okay, my name is Hanifa Scott, and I am second generation immigrant, as you said, and I'm 69 years old.
My name is Khalil Scott. I'm 38 years old, and I'm third generation.
What is your background?
My mother's Canadian, and my father's from Trinidad.
My parents were Canadian, but their parents came both from Barbados.
How long have you lived in Quebec?
All my life.
All my life.
Hanifa, do you know why your parents moved to Quebec?
Well, the usual reasons: you want to come for a better life, but my maternal grandmother's father was already in Nova Scotia. He had left Barbados and gone to Nova Scotia.
And what has been your experiences growing up as a Black woman in Montreal?
I think that there's always been an undercurrent of who do you think you are, and you do not belong.
I like growing up here because I find Montreal is a multicultural city, so that was nice, but sometimes it was difficult, specifically going to school and working, because there's not many Black people at school or work, and I went to 2 different high schools, so the second high school I went to, I was the only Black student in my grade for a few years, so it was tough because I realized that I was the only one occupying that space, so I also had to be like the voice of all Black people.
Did you feel like you faced any inequalities or discrimination being the only Black person in a white-dominated school?
Definitely. I'm considered an immigrant first before being considered a Canadian, and it's tough because I would have to explain, like, no, I'm Canadian, I'm from Montreal, just like you, but it's like they're not aware that we exist, and so it's like they want to know, but they're just curious of how is it that you're English Black living in Quebec versus like, oh yeah, I know you guys are here.
So it made you feel like an outcast, even though you are
sometimes.
a Quebecer just as much as them.
Yes.
And it's always, are you Jamaican? Are you Haitian? I said, don't you know your geography? Can I be from St. Kitts or St. Lucia or Montserrat? It's like they know 2 places that Black people come from.
Did you guys go to a French or English education?
I went to English school.
Okay, so you guys were able to have the choice to go to English education?
Yes, because of Bill 101, your parent goes to English school and their parent goes to English school, so I'm allowed to go to English school and my children are allowed to go to English school.
And what was your experience growing up as an English speaker in a French province? Did you feel like you were ever forced to be French?
Well, I don't know. In elementary, I attended a school that was predominantly Jewish, and there were maybe 6 Black children in the school. I remember that once we did a sort of IQ test, and then when we were singing hymns, the teacher took me outside. I think it was about like grade 5 or 6. Like she said, you're just as smart as Barbara. And Barbara was like the smartest girl in the class. And the woman was obviously in shock. But I do have to admit that I really didn't put much effort into school. I was only interested in what I was interested in. And now that I see my daughter with her children, like she's always, what did you do? Do you have any homework? Did you finish this, that, and the other? I didn't have that growing up.
Up until now, I see that like it's almost shocking that unmelanated people think they're Black because they listen to hip hop. It's the funniest thing to me. I don't know where they get it or how they seem it's important. And another aspect of that is that a lot of these Black Arab students or people, kids, they listen to hip hop, they think they're Black, and they have no Black friends. I can't listen to rock and whatever and be somebody else, you know? And I can't turn it off when I go home. I can't be someone different if I'm stopped by the police, but yet they can just be whatever they want and it's accepted and it's okay and they're finding themselves, whereas we always needed to occupy a space of we know better, so we have to do better. So that was part of my experience. Also, I have 3 brothers, and sometimes the white girls at school would ask me, do my brothers and I come from both mother and father? You don't come from the same mother and father of your siblings, but yet you have the gall to ask me that. And I mean, back then I was just answering a question, but now when I look back and I was like, wow, I can't believe I actually went through that, you know? Like you're thinking, oh, they're your friends, it's part of high school of identity and whatnot. Or even, you know, like a white boy who's really into like underground rappers, and then he comes and he asks you, well, do you know about so-and-so? And I'm like, no, who's that? They're like, aren't you black? Like, that doesn't identify me, you know? Like, there's so many different ways of being black. And I find that people just put us in a bubble and think that, well, you must know about everything in our culture, and it's not the case. You know, there's so many dimensions and layers to it, and unfortunately I had to go through it, and it wasn't fun.
Do you feel like they appropriated Black culture by only benefiting from the good without learning about the bad or trying to educate themselves on it?
Yes, I was even speaking at work recently with some colleagues about how some white people, they so badly want to say the N-word, and us Black people, we call each other everything but. We say, what's up, king? What's up, queen? What's up, my sister, my brother? But yet, well, I want to say the N-word, but like I don't even hang around with Black people who say that. Yeah. So how is it that you think that this is just one way of being Black? It's funny because as you get older, you realize like whatever, it is what it is. But I hope that they learn and they figure out that it's not okay to be something else just because you're just going through it or because you're listening to a type of music. No, like you're really stereotyping us, and most of the Black people you know probably don't even act like that.
And I was saying that you were talking about discrimination in career, and I'm a teacher. I took a year off from work, and I went to tell the principal that I would be gone. And she said, well, you know, when you come back, you're going to have to reapply for your job. And I'd been working for years. That was not the case. And then when I did come back, I thought I was going to teach a certain grade, but she put me all over the place. I went to a different class every day. And then I'd be walking down the hall and I'd say, good morning. No answer. Like after 3 times, I'm sorry, that is discrimination. You're not answering me, but yet you want to say how you love to go to Jamaica. I don't get it. Like, that was just ridiculous. And when you bring it up to people,
she was having a bad day.
Yeah, some excuse.
She had a rough morning.
Mm-hmm. And who knows, she at least voiced how she felt, but what about the things that people don't say, but they feel it?
I actually wrote a book about it, about my experience of being Black and Muslim in Quebec. Experiences of being Black and Muslim in Quebec. And it's not a book like with chapters, it's just like small episodes and experiences that I wrote of me being at work, me being at school, and just me being a Muslim, of microaggressions and experiences that I've went through living here as a Muslim Black English-speaking person in Montreal, and it's available on Etsy. And yeah, it's just talks about things that I went through, and I believe some things written in it, other people have gone through it too. So yeah, believe us when we say these things, because it happens. Code switching really does happen. Like, you go to work and you have to be somebody, and then when you come home, it's like, oh wow, like I was really just acting like a whole nother person right there. Because when you are yourself, they don't get it. They're putting you in the stereotype mind. So, oh, she's acting like that because of a certain kind of growing up. I don't know. But I want to say that the staff room is actually the worst place to be in, because it's like they're off, so they're taking a break from work, and when they're there, they can kind of say whatever. And I get it. I understand you want to vent and you want to talk about things that are issues, but when everybody doesn't look like you, and they're always talking about Black things, and when you're there and they don't come and ask you your opinion, they don't want to include you in the conversation, when they don't want to like get your opinion about things, it's like, you are being racist and you know it. But I also don't want to speak up, because who is going to be there to defend me when they're going to call me out as being the bigot or the discriminatory, because, oh, she's claiming that we're being something but we're not, but yeah, you are. And no one's ever going to vouch for us. So I have to be in a space by myself, and I would rather just let it be and then go and deal with it at the end of the day, versus actually facing them and telling them how they're making me feel was terrible.
It seems like this would build a lot of, built up anger.
That's it. And I don't want to go home and bring confusion and chaos to home, because like that's not fair to my family. But at the same time, it's like, how often am I going to have to go through this to explode, And so it's understandable when people are frustrated, but I don't know, it's We can't be angry, but they can be fragile.
And do you feel like, as a Black woman, you felt like you had the responsibility to not be angry because of the angry Black woman stereotype?
I think it was actually easier to walk away, because if I was angry, I would say things that would get me reprimanded. A letter would be in my file, maybe even fired, because I know no one was going to stick up for me. Because if they're having those kind of conversations, you clearly are not one of my friends. I wrote about it in my book. There was the staff was talking about how Black people saying the N-word amongst themselves made them uncomfortable. Like, how is that making you uncomfortable? Like, what about it? So they all took turns and mentioned like, oh, and I didn't know what to do, and how dare they? Like, can't they just use another word? But this has nothing to do with you. So why are you even having this kind of conversation? Another place I worked, the guidance counselor, the spiritual animator, and history teacher were all talking about why Black people like to go back to jail. And his answer was, so they can hang out with their homies and watch cable TV. And no one said, oh, you're racist. Oh, no one said, oh, you're wrong. And I'm there, and they see me, but it's like, what am I gonna say? What am I gonna say to speak up to staff that talks like that and that are teaching students? Just walk away.
You don't feel like they really see you.
No, they don't see me. And then it would just be me, and oh, you took it the wrong way, or you don't know what they were talking about, or oh, you have it all wrong. But we were discussing a documentary I was watching on TV, like, yeah, okay. Let me talk the same thing about the Star of David, and it would be a whole nother thing.
This province we live in is a really colorblind space, and they feel like it's better not to see any color or any race. Do you feel like that erases your identity when people see things like that?
Absolutely, because how can you say you don't see color? Like, you don't see me? You don't see that most schools just have one Black student? You don't see that there are no colored teachers? You don't see that there's no colored principals? You don't see that there's no colored cops? You don't see that? You don't see that, like, we're telling you things that happened to us, but like, how can you say that it's not so?
But you choose to see color when you feel like there's a danger.
Yeah, because then it affects them.
Yeah.
When it affects you, then there's an issue. But when it doesn't affect you, and that's where privilege comes in, but that's a whole nother story.
I'm more vocal at work. I say I work with Mediterranean people, and I tell them all the time, I said, you're lucky you have me on staff, or else you would have had no diversity, no fun, no different kind of culture. You would have just gone home to your white bread. And I tell them like that. I just don't care, because I've been through it all. It's just like, it's enough now. And you play, you don't understand, you don't know, but it's right there in front of you. I've seen white children who have been, you can see that they've been neglected. They might not have food to eat. They come to school looking unclean. Nobody's calling youth protection on them. But let it be a Black child
whose hair is not done.
Yes.
And oh, I need to go talk to her, because maybe they don't know that their hair needs to be done for school.
Oh my goodness.
Are you kidding me?
It's such a double standard, and I'm just sick of it. I'm gonna retire this year anyway, so I can't.
So Hanifa, you said you've been through it all, so I'd like to ask you, could you describe to us what it's like living through so many different generations in Quebec?
I don't know, before it was like, I was la petite négresse, and then I've been called that many times. And then it's like, like in the grocery store, it's the motzi négresse, and it's bad. It's really bad, and they don't talk about it, but it's true, like what my daughter said. If I had said that to somebody, it's like I'm verbally abusing somebody, and that's not fair. A few years ago, my son had this gold chain on, and him and his younger brother were going downtown, and my son got shot at. He went to the hospital, but the police acted like he was a suspect. And are you in a gang, and this and that and the other? They didn't want to hear anything. He had to sit in the emergency. No care was given to him except for a Band-Aid. He stayed there all night. He was supposed to be given kind of victims resources, was never mentioned to him. They told his younger brother he was going to one hospital, he was sent to another. He said, please let my brother come in the ambulance with me. No. Like, what is that? That is discrimination. it's, you know, he's coming home late at night, he's walking along the street, the cop car is like 2 yards away from him, just slowly driving behind. That's intimidating.
Yeah.
How, and then you want us to respect the police?
And then our lovely premier says that there is no systemic racism. So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Because in my elementary daughter's child's history book, a colonizer is somebody who comes to a place to develop it for the better. That's what she needs to learn. And then in high school, the history book, they're talking about how the French Quebecers worked as hard as les nègres. And they're talking about this book, and it's always about the white Quebecer story and plot line. And when people brought it to the
Ministry?
Yeah, the ministry for like to say, look, there's bad words in this and whatnot, their band-aid solution was literally that, like, we're gonna send you white stickers to cover that text, but we're still gonna cover the subject because it's important for y'all to know about Quebec history, but like we're not in the history, not even the natives.
And do you feel as though what your daughter's learning in school might affect her self-esteem as a Black girl?
No, because I'm letting her know from the beginning, this is what you need to know to pass the test. Pass the test, and that's it. I am doing my job as a parent and teaching my children their history and what they need to know, and to let them be aware of racism, and people are not going to like you just because of the color of your skin. And I mean, my mom had that talk with us, I have that talk with them, and it's very important because it's a reality, and it hasn't stopped. It's been going on forever.
And, you know, speaking on this, how did you feel about this whole George Floyd situation where, you know, every day you felt like you weren't being heard and all of a sudden everyone started to care?
Well, I think it was a wake-up call to the real United States, and people finally saw North America for what it is. You know, like people could want to say, oh, Canada's different. It's not different. It's very much the same, but it's much more subtle. Although I find now it's just like in your face. Nobody's really tiptoeing around you anymore. They're just blatantly telling you how they feel. And the entitlement is rampant. And I would hope that, I don't know, I just want the children, the new generation to know their story, not his story. And we have to work to get that across.
I mean, you're doing it right now, right?
Yeah, hopefully, yes, I am doing it right now. And I'm really passionate about it. I get, like at work with my other Black colleagues, I'll tell them about something and then I'll say, oh, you know, the Blackness. And they say, oh, it's always about Blackness. I said, yes, money, sex, and race, that's it. Like, wake up. Like, how come you don't know this? And these are my own colleagues that I have to work with. It's like, what is it? Knowledge is, it's powerful, but it's also puts you in a different category sometimes. And
It affects their pride.
yeah. And I've always taught my children to be outspoken and to stand up for themselves, but then they've been labeled, like, because they know what they're talking about. Like, as my daughter would say, like when they were younger, it was like, it was like Afrocentricity was in, so we always had the African clothes, and we were like the model Black family. When you saw us, you knew you were gonna get the whole look. And I always taught them about Blackness and got them Black coloring books and all of that stuff. But now I don't. Yeah, okay, you got a Black Barbie.
Well, in terms of George Floyd, it's devastating, but it was also devastating with Rodney King, with Eric Garner, with Tamir Rice, with Breonna Taylor, with Ahmaud Arbery. It's frustrating because I find there's a lot of performative alliance that happens. Like, yeah, I'm gonna be down for you now, but then it's gonna die down and it's gonna be back to the usual. And you know, for how long, you know, Black lawmakers have been trying to pass the anti-lynching bill for Emmett Till, and they can't get it, but then they make a movie. It's frustrating Because when you explain this to people and people that you believe are your peers are in the same boat as you, they're like, oh, well, you know, at least they have a movie, or like, but that's not enough. Like, why do we always have to settle for just the bare minimum? I wish we did more. I wish we all stuck it out long enough to get something in return versus we're gonna protest today and that's it.
Like, I wish all Black people would not shop on Black Friday.
Yeah.
That would be a great
Like,
thing.
just don't do that.
But no, they gotta buy the Gap shoes for Christmas. Come on, people. There's more to life than being a consumer.
And I know you said about bills, and we have a prime minister who says there's no systemic racism. And I just wanted to ask you, how did you feel about the Bill 21, where if you felt like they wanted to erase your identity and you couldn't express your religion in your workplace?
We can wear it because we're under the grandfather clause. But like, I feel bad for those new teachers who were not able to teach.
See, even there, like, it's not like a Black issue, it's like a Muslim issue.
Yeah.
So I think if all Muslims protested, something would have happened. But instead, we just marched for a day or a weekend or whatever, and that's it. Like, you need to put pressure, you need to hurt them where they're gonna feel it. And I do question, do people talk about these issues at home besides who it's affecting? So like, oh, you know, I'm gonna be your ally at work, but are you really my ally? Are you gonna tell your racist grandfather that this is wrong? Are you gonna tell your racist mother that it's an issue? Versus like, oh, I'm only gonna be your friend where it's needed, but like in reality, I don't care because it doesn't affect me. It hurts.
It is affecting us to our very core, and it's like a everyday thing. It's it's how we breathe and we eat and we live. And yes, we put, as my daughter would say, we put on the brave face, but it's sad when we go home and think about all the things that have happened.
Because when blatant like prejudice and racism happens, you're almost you're shocked first because you're like, oh, you're really doing this to me right now. Like, oh, okay. But like, you know, like, thank goodness that there's other things on my mind besides that, and I'm like, whatever. But sometimes you do need to speak up and say something, but you're still going to be labeled as a Black angry woman, or like, oh, you always have an opinion, or you always have something to say, because sometimes it just falls on deaf ears. Yeah. And like, what's the point of even arguing with them? Because at the end of the day, like, they're just who they are, and it's not going to change whether you say something or not. But if everyone said something, and if everyone get on board, then maybe they're going to see it's an issue. Like, you can put in your mirror a sign that says Black Lives Matter, but if you're not really doing anything about it, you're just showing, you're not doing.
The same as doing that.
That's it.
Yeah. It's just because it's trendy.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. Don't speak about it, be about it.
Yeah.
What changes do you think will take place in the future for the next generation of Black English-speaking Quebecers? If you think there will be any.
I think that the changes will be slow in coming. I think that we can't expect, like, okay, we might be upset that some kind of topic that relates to Black people is not taught in school, but we have to remember who's in charge of the school system. So we as adults have to teach the coming generation our stories. We have to research. We have to make it part of our everyday living. Maybe like make it be a fun way, but they have to learn so that like they can be proud and they can walk with their head high and they could, you know, answer back when people say ridiculous things to them.
I don't know, like, I don't want to sound pessimistic, but like, I think you first need to learn from home. You need to be taught at home. You need to be more aware at home. And I know that some people that I know, I don't know if they're talking about race at home. I don't know. And I mean, I wish that like maybe the Black politicians were really about Black people. Like that would help, maybe. But I don't know. We're also too divided because at this point we're living in a state where it's good that we're multicultural and we see everybody for who they are, but we're all getting mixed up, and now you have the half Black kids and half Chinese kids and the half Indian kids, and it's getting to be like, well, they're all so mixed up, there is no race, we're just one. So we're getting lost in the sauce, kind of.
And what would you say is more important, educating those who are ignorant or uplifting the voices of the unheard?
Uplifting, because then there will be the voices for everybody to follow, make a change.
White English Quebec can't even get it together with the indigenous, so how are they going to get it together for the black people? But I'll still say what I have to say and do what I have to do, and because I
will play our part.
Yeah, because I have my grandchildren. I want them to have a better future.
What does it mean to have cultural identity?
I would say just to be aware of who you are, where you came from, and what your goals are for the future.
All right, what do you think about carrying on a legacy/cultural practice?
It's important because it shapes who they are.
And do you feel included in Quebec society?
What is Quebec society?
I find Montreal very different than Quebec.
Mm-hmm.
Like Montreal is really the happening place, and like it's kind, it's embracing. It's like I love when like there's like sidewalk sales and whatnot, and like different like
all the different festivals.
Yeah,
like,
that's
we like
really
that.
nice.
We like to be Montrealers, and we're proud to say we're Montrealers. But it isn't really an easy.
It's not the reality of Quebec.
No. Well, I think no, it's not the reality of Quebec because Montreal is an entity all its own.
Yeah.
Out in the boondocks, it's true. Maybe they don't know English. Maybe they don't. Maybe many of them have never seen a black person.
Yeah.
So of course we're going to be other. And I think that's the thing with French Canadians. They don't like other. They showed that with the indigenous people. They didn't like them because they were other. And they took away all their culture. So now it's like, we're here. Well, you see, everybody else can blend in because they're white.
Yeah.
But when you have a color to you, you can't blend in. No matter how much you think you're Quebecois. No, you're not.
And do you think that in Quebec the default is white French speaking rather than just a human?
Yes, because look how like on any sign of a restaurant or a menu, English text has to be a third the size of French. Who came up with that? Like that's foolish. It's just their standards are so like
Skewed.
Yes, and like where did that come up from? How is it that writing something smaller is gonna make you lose whatever your identity? Like no. People came to Montreal for a reason. They come to Quebec for a reason. And then when they see like the realities of stuff, it's like, oh, I didn't even know this even existed here.
Mind you, talking about the education, I sent my children all to like French immersion programs because I wanted them to know the French. And they're all bilingual and they speak fluently. I mean, I love the French language, I just don't know the French culture.
Where do you find community?
Like-minded people.
Yes.
I mean, I do have I have Asian friends, I have white friends, I have Spanish friends, I have black friends. It's like we all, maybe because we all grew up how we did, so it was different. But
And what stories are still untold?
I don't know, where are we going to be a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? How are things going to change? Because as much as they've changed, they've also regressed. So I don't know what's going to be the future.
Or do you think the stories that are being told right now might be untold again?
I just think it's always going to be like a struggle. And maybe it might not be as hard for other generations that are going to follow, but there's always going to be some kind of struggle or setback or trying to fit in storyline because we're not going anywhere. We're going to be here and we're part of society whether they like it or not, and it is what it is.
All right, well, thank you guys so much for this interview. It was very
Thank you.
insightful.
It was our pleasure.
Any last words or quotes or a message to the people watching?
Stay strong. Keep reading. Reading is the key.